So picture this. It's 1485. A Welsh nobleman, Henry Tudor, has just won the English crown on the battlefield, and boom, he's King Henry VII. But here's the thing. Winning a kingdom is one thing. Keeping it is a whole different ballgame. For the next 24 years, he was in a constant fight to secure his new dynasty, and that forced him to make some really tough choices. And that brings us right to the heart of this explainer. Who was Henry VIII really? Was he this forward-thinking businessman king, totally focused on making England rich? Or was he a paranoid monarch who just saw trade as another weapon in his political toolbox? When push came to shove, what mattered more, his country's wealth or his family's crown?
You know, at first glance, the case for Henry the businessman seems rock solid. He made some big, decisive moves to boost England's commercial power, especially when it came to its #1 industry, the cloth trade.
And his approach was super systematic. I mean, look at this. He passed navigation acts, which basically forced English goods to be carried on English ships. Smart. He slopped heavy taxes on the export of raw wool because he wanted the more profitable work of finishing the cloth to happen inside England. He even took on the Hanseatic League, this powerful German trading cartel, banning them from exporting unfinished cloths to protect English jobs. It was, for all intents and purposes, an England-first trade policy. So, did it work? Oh yeah, the results kind of speak for themselves. During Henry's reign, the amount of finished cloth exported from England exploded by an incredible 60%. That was a massive shot in the arm for the English economy, and a huge win for its merchants. Henry was also a slick negotiator, weaving these sweet commercial deals into his biggest diplomatic wins. Take the Treaty of Medina del Campo with Spain in 1489. That wasn't just about a royal wedding. No, it gave English merchants amazing access to Spanish markets. Then, a few years later, the Treaty of Etopolis with France didn't just end a war, it tore down trade barriers. And the big one, the Intercursus Magnus of 1496, secured free trade with Burgundy, which was the single most important place for English cloth. Case closed, right? Henry's the trade king. Well, not so fast. Yeah, because just when you think you've got him figured out, the story takes a sharp turn. For every pro-trade move he made, there's a moment where his political paranoia just completely took over, and it looked like he was willing to burn the whole thing down just to protect his throne. And this right here is the perfect example of that conflict. When Margaret of Burgundy decided to back a pretender to the throne, this guy named Perkin Warbeck, Henry's response was swift and honestly brutal. In 1493, he slapped a complete trade embargo on all of Burgundy. Now, think about that for a second. He cut off trade with his #1 customer, causing a ton of economic pain back home, all to squeeze one political rival. And it was not a one-off. Remember how he challenged the powerful Hanseatic League for the sake of English merchants? Well, in 1504, he got spooked that they might support another rival, the fugitive Earl of Suffolk. So what did he do? A complete 180. He passed an act giving the League back all their special trading privileges, basically throwing his own merchants under the bus to make sure the League wouldn't help his enemy. So, what's the verdict in our king versus accountant debate? Well, the evidence is pretty overwhelming. When Henry VIII had to choose, the crown came first. Every single time. To really get Henry, you have to understand this one core idea: dynastic security. Look, his claim to the throne was, let's be honest, pretty shaky. He was surrounded by potential rivals, so his primary, overriding goal above all else was to make sure his family, the Tudors, stayed in power. Trade, treaties, taxes, they were all just tools to make that happen. And this quote from our sources just absolutely nails it. For Henry, a little, or even a lot of, economic damage was a perfectly acceptable price to pay for political security. Profit was good, for sure, but power was essential. In fact, you can see this clear pattern, like a 4-step playbook he used again and again. Step 1, a rival claimant appears. Step 2, he weaponizes trade, either with an embargo or by giving away concessions to corner his foe. Step 3, he neutralizes the threat. And only then, step 4, once his dynasty was safe, did he bother to restore normal trade. But to really get why Henry was so willing to sacrifice trade, we need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture of what England's economy actually looked like back then. And whoa, this chart really puts it all into perspective. For all the fuss we make about it, the cloth trade was a tiny, tiny fraction of the English economy. It employed just over 1% of the population. The real economy, the thing that mattered to over 90% of the people, was agriculture. Damaging the cloth trade with an embargo was a calculated risk, for sure, but a widespread famine or a peasant revolt, now that would have been a real existential threat to his crown. This whole security-first mindset also explains why he was so cautious. I mean, while Spain and Portugal were throwing money at exploring the New World, Henry was famously tight-fisted. Sure, he gave the explorer John Cabot just enough money to get to North America, but he wasn't about to gamble huge fortunes on colonization. His focus was on locking down his kingdom at home, not risking it on some far-flung adventure. And yet, here's the twist. You can't really call this a story of failure. Henry's cautious, security-obsessed policies had a massive long-term payoff. By crushing his rivals and getting the kingdom's finances in order, he created the solid, peaceful foundation that his son and granddaughter, Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, would later use to build a global power. Which leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Was Henry VIII's laser focus on security a short-sighted move that cost England an early lead in the race for empire? Or was it actually the single most important thing he could have done, the necessary, unglamorous work of building a stable state that made everything that came after it possible?